So while I was in training mode earlier, I was messing around with doing things like Fox Trot into perfect pivot into like a jab, which is something I see Fatality do with a jab and grab as kind of an approach option, because obviously when you're running you can't just stop all of a sudden and do a jab. You have to either wait for your dash animation to end, or you have to like shield and then release shield, and it's kind of annoying. But if you do Fox Trot into a perfect pivot, which I have a difficulty with but I've been working on, so that if you do dash dance into a perfect pivot, and then you can follow up with something like a jab or a grab. But in Greninja's case, just doing a standing grab is god awful, because the standing grab comes out on like frame 11, and while it might have decent range, it's just really bad. And look at this. It takes so long for it to actually grab the opponent. It's really bad. But while I was messing around with doing dash dance into perfect pivot and all that stuff, and just fiddling with the control stick like that, what I ended up doing was I found out a new tech, which I think would be very useful for not only Greninja, but various characters that have a very good like pivot grab, like maybe Donkey Kong. I'm not sure how good his like dash dance or perfect pivot is, but I think he has a pretty decent perfect pivot length. So what you can do is, when you do a foxtrot, you just do a foxtrot and then you do a foxtrot back like you normally would, except at the end of the foxtrot you do a grab and pivot it. So you can either do the one that makes you slide back like that, or what I found is even better is there's one that makes you stand in place and still do your pivot grab while facing forward in the direction that you were running. This makes your grab not only come out earlier for a character like Greninja, but it also extends the length of your grab while still standing in place. A normal grab from this distance will not grab Pac-Man, but a pivot grab from that distance does grab Pac-Man. Not a perfect pivot grab, but a regular pivot grab. But as you can see, I slide too far away is the main problem. It kind of nullifies the fact that I have the increased distance for the grab. But by doing an extended one, comparing it to the regular distance one, when I just did the perfect pivot one, the standing grab, my standing grab doesn't reach as far, but the pivot grab actually managed to reach that extra gap and grab the opponent. I think this is extremely useful for characters that have a very large pivot grab range, like Greninja. Not to mention, it can also be used as sort of a bait tool, where rather than doing the one that I stand in place, I can do the one where I slide backward. By doing the one where I slide backward, I can actually like run forward, and then the opponent will start to come at me, or try to come at me with some sort of attack maybe, and then I can just weave backward. And by weaving backward, they will just run straight into my grab, which is like a very useful like defensive option. So this can be used both aggressively and defensively depending on which version you use. For now, I'm not entirely certain what term I want to call it, but I think I'd like to call it something along the lines of Foxtrot Pivot Grab or Dash Dance Pivot Grab. And then the alternate version would be Foxtrot Retreating Pivot Grab or Foxtrot or Dash Dance Retreating Pivot Grab. So I'd have the two versions, the standing one and the retreating one. So let me know what you guys think this term should be called. Let me know if you actually think that it is useful, because I think that this, if used properly, could be very useful. Based on what I've seen with how Fatality uses Foxtrot into a perfect pivot for jab and standing grab, I think that this is a very useful tool for just doing a Foxtrot into a pivot grab, or a reverse pivot grab, because you can always just do like a Fox Trot into like that kind of grab. You don't even need to do a Fox Trot to do that kind of grab, but by doing a Fox Trot into that is extremely useful, because then you're not risking yourself by pushing yourself too close to the opponent. Your grab range is extended, and for a character like Greninja, your grab comes out sooner. If I am correct about how his frame data works. I might have to confirm that later, but to the best of my knowledge, that is how it works. So let me know what you guys think of this technique, and let me know if you think it can be very useful or not so useful.